on forgiveness. Many spiritual texts and teachers want you to be forgiving and kind. But often, forgiving is hard. How do you forgive people who have abused you or insulted you, maybe even physically attacked you? It's easy to forgive your neighbor who once shouted at you for parking in his driveway. It's easy to forgive your boss if he doesn't recognize your contributions. You might even forgive a boyfriend or girlfriend who mistreated you. But how do you forgive years of pain? For example, if you were abused by your partner, husband, wife, parents. Forgiveness is one of those things very easy to do in theory, but very hard to do in practice. But it needn't be hard. You have to understand why forgiveness is important. When you hold a grudge or you hate someone because of what they did to you, not only are you judging them and keeping them prisoner, but you're keeping yourself a prisoner as well. As the Course in Miracles says, not only is the prisoner stuck in jail, but also the jailer. When you hate someone or hold a grudge against them, when you cannot forgive them, not only are you holding them in prison, you're holding yourself as well. You are bound as much as the other person. Here's something I've tried that has worked for me. Might work for you, but might not work. Sit down in meditation and just let your mind go blank. Then try to think of people who have offended you or whose even thought angers you. And slowly say, I forgive you. If you cannot forgive them, say, I forgive myself for hating you. Because remember, hatred is a form of self-violence. When you get angry at someone and hate them, they might not feel the effect, but you certainly do. Your mind and your body both react. You store up the anger in your body and you cause yourself long-term damage, which might come up as diseases or as physical pains and aches. When you hold hatred towards someone, you may not hurt them, but you're certainly hurting yourself. So here's what to do. Say, I forgive myself for hating XYZ. What you're doing is you're breaking your own connection of hate to the other person. Ultimately, you will have to forgive them, but start by breaking your own connection to hate, your own feelings that are damaging you. So say, I forgive myself for hating so-and-so person. And this is easier than forgiving the other person, because you're not letting them go for anything bad they have done. You're merely breaking your connection to them. One thing to be warned about is, when forgiving, do not do what the Course in Miracles calls forgiveness to destroy. Forgiveness to destroy occurs when you say, you are such an evil bastard of a person. but I forgive you because I am so spiritual. You're like, oh, you bastard. You are a bastard, but I'll forgive you because you know what? I'm a spiritual man. That's what spiritual people do. We forgive. That's not forgiveness. That's fake forgiveness. That's forgiveness to destroy. If you cannot forgive them directly, forgive yourself, like I said. Break your own connection to them. If you have been horribly abused, like for example child abuse or abused by your partner for many years, it is highly recommended that you get psychotherapy first. Because years of abuse or very violent abuse, like child abuse or physical violence, it leads a lot of negative energy in your body. All that hatred, all that anger, all that fear gets pumped up into your body as energy. This is not a psychic term, this is an actual scientific, psychological energy. You don't have to think, ooh, magical energy. Just think of it terms as emotional energy. All this negative energy is blocked in your body and mind. And you cannot be expected to fix it yourself. So the best solution is to go to a psychotherapist. Find someone who is trained to deal with such trauma. You will find that it is easier to forgive once you've had some psychotherapy. Once you've got rid of all the emotion, the blocked emotion. And this is very necessary because while you're carrying all that emotional baggage, you might find it hard to forgive someone. That's why I say take it in stages. Forgive yourself first. Get psychotherapy if the abuse was too much and you're still carrying the effects of that abuse. This is the beginner's guide to forgiveness. However, there's a much more advanced version. A Course in Miracles talks a lot about forgiveness. But during my own meditation, and by reading the text and my own meditation, I find that what it means by forgiveness is a lot different to what people think when they hear the word forgiveness. A Course in Miracles, and remember this is my own interpretation, not a mental interpretation, but based on meditation. This is what my inner teacher told me. This may not be relevant for you, but this is relevant for me. So my inner teacher told me that the real forgiveness is realizing that the other person cannot be mistaken. Because we are all children of God. We are all spiritual beings. We are all divine. And as such, none of us can commit any sin. We cannot make any mistakes. So the real forgiveness, this is the highest level. Think of it as the PhD level. So this is like the PhD, the doctorate of forgiveness. So the real forgiveness is realizing that nobody can commit a mistake or a sin anyway, because we are all divine. This might seem hard to the other people, most people, because you see criminals, you see gangsters, you see child abusers, you see rapists, you see murderers, and you say, oh, how can you say there are no sinners? But that's why I said this is the advanced level, master level. In that way you see that even people who are acting in an unconscious manner, who are committing crimes or abuse. So the way to look at it is that they're acting in an unconscious manner. They are still divine. Even the most violent murderer, the rapist, the gangster who has ordered hundreds of deaths, the mass murderer, even they have a spark of divine in them. And most people cannot accept this, and they will never accept it, and that's fine. But if you want to go beyond the world of form, you want to go beyond always being stuck in this cycle of rebirth and pain and misery, you have to realize that everyone, even the most violent criminal, mass murderer, rapist, has God or a spark of the divine in them. And as such, they cannot make a mistake. They cannot sin. They cannot commit crimes because they are divine. And this is the hardest thing to do. But this is ultimately what our own inner teacher wants us to do. To realize that we are all sinless. We are all pure, perfect beings. Even people insulting you, attacking you, humiliating you, even they are perfect beings. And you have to see the divinity, the divine in them. Even when they cannot see it, you have to realize that they are blind. They cannot realize their own divinity. But that doesn't mean that it's not there. And like I said, this might be very hard to accept. But seeing that even the most unconscious people have a spark of the divine in them, and so they cannot do any wrong. They might act unconsciously temporarily, but that does not mean they are sinners. This is the real forgiveness, in which you refuse to even judge other people. You refuse to say, you're such a bad person, because you realize that the other person is divine to begin with. If you look at Jesus Christ, even when he was being killed, he said, God forgive them. They do not know what they do. This is real forgiveness. Christ refused to judge them. He refused to say, you bastard, how dare you kill me? Don't you know I'm the Son of God? Don't you know who I am? Do you know how important I am? I talk to God every day. I got him on speed dial. He's on my email list. He didn't say any of that because he knew that even the people who were killing him, that's the worst you can get, right? People torturing and murdering you. He saw that even they were not bad people because he could see the God even in them. This is real forgiveness. Even as the world is attacking you, people are abusing you, shouting at you, humiliating you, treating you like dirt, treating you like, treating you as small as the smallest, full stop. Even then you see the divine in them because you realize that this is not who they are. They're acting like this because they're unconscious. But this is not who they are. In spite of all their unconsciousness, they are still divine, still godly, they're still spirit, pure spirit. And this is real forgiveness. This cannot happen intellectually. It must come from meditation. If you meditate, you sit and meditate, you will, at a time, one day, realize this. It'll be a realization, a miracle, as the Course in Miracles calls it. Your mind will shift and you will start seeing everyone as the enemy. But this is the goal we have to aim for. The realization that nobody is wrong. There are no sinners. That we are all divine, even if the other person does not realize it. Seeing the divine in others, even when they cannot see it in themselves, is the real forgiveness. You're forgiving themselves for not acting in a conscious matter, because you realize that they have no choice. Most people are slaves to their mechanical thoughts, their habits, and they cannot break out of it even if they want to. And as spiritual beings, it is our job to forgive them their mistake, that they think that they are the body and the mind and not pure spirit. Okay, so we have multiple levels of forgiveness. One is you forgive people around you, you meet day to day. If you cannot forgive them, you forgive yourself first, and over time you build up to it. You get psychotherapy if you need. This is the second step. Optional, but I recommend it. Third step is then you forgive people who you might have been hated for years. You might have had a bad relation for years. Your parents, your children, People who were your friends one time, but you haven't talked to them for years because you had a big fight. You forgive them. And forgiving doesn't mean, if somebody stole money from you, you go, oh buddy, you stole money from me, but I forgive you, let's be friends again. Or forgiveness doesn't mean that you let the other person do what you want. You still might not trust them. If somebody stole money from you, you won't lend them money again. If someone physically abused you, you might go to the police and have them arrested. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to come Jesus Christ immediately. Ooh la la, I forgive you. You don't. You're not Jesus Christ yet. You're not Buddha yet. You're not the Krishna yet. So you accept where you are. Forgiveness just means you no longer hold hate in your heart towards them. That's all it means. There is no hate in your heart. So if somebody abused you, you might have to take them to the police, to the courts. You might have to spend years in this process, but you have to do it without hate. You might choose to let them go. For example, if somebody stole money from you, you might say, right, this is a beautiful thing I heard in Marianne Williamson. She heard a what's it called, a workshop, and I heard a recording of that. So in this recording, a man, his brother had stolen a lot of money from him, like $25,000. And he was angry at this guy, really angry. Until he sat down to meditate, he wrote a letter to God. And God said back to him that, your brother didn't steal money from you. Your brother stole that money from me. So you let it go. And this guy, he let it go. He forgave his brother. And he got a lot more money back. God gave him the money in some other way. So that's the real forgiveness. You realize that the other person hasn't stolen from you. They haven't abused you. They have abused God, because we all have God living in our hearts. And when someone attacks us, they don't attack us. They attack the divine living in our heart. There's a story I heard about a Greek mystic in Cyprus. He was in Cyprus, and this was during the 70s and 80s when there was some trouble going on there. And a policeman arrested him for something and slapped him real hard. And this guy, he didn't get angry. Instead, he said, you haven't slapped me, you have slapped yourself. This is a very spiritual thing. He said, you didn't slap me, you slapped yourself. Because we are all divine, we all come from the same source, the same spiritual source, the same divine source. So when you hurt another person, you're actually hurting yourself. When you slap another person, you're actually slapping yourself. When you steal from another person, you're actually stealing from yourself. So when another person hurts you, you have to understand that they're not hurting you. They're actually hurting themselves. They don't steal from you, they don't abuse you, they abuse themselves. And this is the real forgiveness. This is where forgiveness comes in. You forgive them their mistake, because you realize that they'll have to suffer for this. No God is going to punish them. No karma is going to punish them. These are all childish concepts. There is no God sitting up there like a teacher or a judge, slapping bad boys and giving lollipops to good girls. That's not how it works. People are punished, but they're punished by their own ignorance. Their own suffering is brought up by themselves. When you hurt another person, you're actually hurting yourself. And this will come back to you. It's a sort of circle. And forgiveness is the way to break this circle. That's why I said even the biggest murderer, rapist, criminal, they can escape this cycle if they're willing to forgive. Because once you forgive, you break this circle of karma in which you invite your own misery. That's how simple it is. By forgiving someone, you're breaking the cycle of karma, the chain that keeps you bound to them. The other person might still have to suffer by themselves, not by some God. But that's not your job. You're breaking your connection with them. When you say to someone, I forgive you, you realize that by hurting you, they have hurt themselves. and you forgive them for being so stupid that they're hurting themselves in their ignorance. It's like a drug addict, who falls down a drain and falls on the stairs and breaks his leg. Are you going to laugh at him? Ha ha ha, what a stupid man, he fell down the stairs. Or are you going to feel sorry for him that in his addiction he can't even walk properly? That's what forgiveness is. You realize that the other person is in pain. Even the people who hurt you, they are in pain because they're causing themselves the pain. They're injuring themselves by hurting you. And as a spiritual being, this is why I said this is the advanced class. You have to realize that they didn't hurt you, they hurt themselves. And you forgive themselves for that. You realize you feel mercy for them. You feel compassion for them. That's what the Buddha said, right? He said, feel compassion for the world. Because in their ignorance, they don't realize what they're doing. That's our job as Buddhas, as enlightened beings. Feel compassion for our fellow beings. Realize that they're stuck in this cycle of self-violence, self-hatred that keeps them stuck in the world of form, keeps them stuck in rebirths. Make sure that they can never escape this endless cycle. This is when you forgive someone, you're showing them compassion. You're breaking your own link to that cycle, and you're letting the divine flow through you. This is the real meaning of forgiveness. It's not just, oh, my boss is so bad, he's a bastard, but I forgive him. That might be the first stage of forgiveness, but we need to move beyond that. And this moving beyond happens through meditation. It happens through practicing forgiveness. It happens through living in the world, dealing with, asshole people and still seeing the God in them. Dear God, this person is such an asshole, but I can still see the divine in him. That's real forgiveness. Thank you for listening. Leave you with a deep breath. Thank you. May you find forgiveness for yourself. May you realize that when you hurt others, you hurt yourself. And when others hurt you, they also hurt themselves. And I pray that you break this cycle of non-stop violence and self-hate. Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you want a free course on how to contact your inner teacher, your own spiritual guide, the part of the divine who lives inside of you and is guiding your spiritual progress, then please go to my website, thepathtojoy.org. That is thepathtojoy.org. Thank you.